Hi, my name is Allison Lee, and I'm part of the Clexical Organization, which is an organization that promotes contemporary music to our community. And I'm with Elizabeth Brown today, and I was wondering if you could introduce yourself.
I am Elizabeth Brown, as you just said, and I'm a composer and performer, originally trained as a classical flutist.
Wow. So I have a few questions for you today, and I'll start off with one of the big questions. What is the initial inspiration behind your composition pieces? And I was wondering if you could share a bit of insights into your creative processes and particularly how you begin writing a new composition.
Well, I would say it's different for every piece, but talking about my flute music in general, because I'm writing as a player, um, usually I know who I'm writing for. I mean, sometimes it's me, but if it's another flutist, I almost always know them and I know how they play. And sometimes to get started, I imagine I'm at the concert and sitting in the audience and listening to what this person would play. And I often get ideas like people will play for me. And in terms of inspiration, things I've read, visual art often, um, music, I'm kind of everything. It's in a big stew inside me. But I have always just heard music in my head, and I'm trying to get to this ideal of, form and beauty. And I never get there. So in every piece, I'm just trying to do that again. And in terms of my flute writing, what I want is to get close to this music in my head, but I also want the flute to feel really resonant. And I've written a lot of things that are outside of standard flute technique, but none of them are hard. They're new, but they're all things that just with a little repetition and practice, they're just patterns and anybody can learn them. So my goal, I'm just going to talk more about flute writing. Is that once you learn a piece that it's a joy to play it and you feel like your sound is the most important thing.
Hmm, that's very nice. Um, I read in your bio that you also grew up on a agricultural research station in Alabama, and I was wondering how that environment kind of shaped your imagination and eventually your music.
Well, I'm sure it did. There wasn't really much music there, and
Mm.
I had a really, really late start. But I would say that uh, in the very tiny town where I went to school, at one point, somebody moved to the town who played flute. And I think she was the first person I ever heard play any instrument well, but I just locked onto this that I just really wanted to play the flute. I'd never heard of violin or anything else. There was a small band, but when I was 16, somehow I finally got my first flute and, didn't have a teacher or anything. I was just in the middle of nowhere. So I had a really late start. Um, I know you've played Trillium, and that was a piece that my dear friend and colleague Jane Rosenfeld encouraged me to write for the high school competition for the National Flute Association. I think maybe 1999, way back before you were born. And she kept saying, Elizabeth, you have to write this piece because a lot of young flutists will play your music and it will open a lot of doors for you, and it has. But what I was imagining when I wrote that piece was myself as a high school student. And, I didn't have a good flute. I had a closed hole C-foot flute, and I didn't really know much. And so I thought, well, see what I can write that would be playable on any flute. And if there's any unusual fingering, I'll put it in the music. So somebody like me who was just on their own could maybe learn to play it.
Wow.
So that was Trillium in particular. And um, I love wildflowers, and I think I started it in the spring, and there were trilliums blooming in the woods, and they have three parts in trillium. And my piece had three parts, and I just like the name. So
Mhm.
that was kind of how that piece came to be.
Wow, that's beautiful. I was wondering if there was any other pieces you would like to share the key musical ideas or themes you explored?
Well, another piece that is played a lot is Arcana, which is for flute, and there's a recorded soundscape. So you can play it just with, any CD player or play it off your computer. All you really need is a speaker and a way to play the sound. And that piece had a very unusual beginning because I found an email actually in my spam folder. Always look in your spam folder, just in case, from Itzhak Perlman's wife wanting to commission a piece for their daughter's birthday and for Ariella, who was a flute student. And she had played Trillium, and they thought it was the first piece where she really came into her own. She was a student at Rice in Texas with Leon Bicey. That was her teacher. And so through Leon Bicey, they contacted me, and they wanted this piece to be a complete surprise for Ariella. And I wanted to start working with recorded sounds. Um, and so I used the commission money to buy a computer and the program that allowed me to just assemble all these found sounds I'd been collecting for a long time. And then they wanted it to be a surprise, but be sort of tailored for her. And so I couldn't really meet her. So I talked to some of her friends, Natalie Joachim, who I knew well at the time, was a good friend. And I just would ask people, and I asked her teacher what she like, and they said, oh, she's very independent. She's very feisty. And so I was imagining if this flutist, this young flutist, could talk with her flute, what would she say? And then I ended up recording all kinds of things like I imagined her slamming a door, and I recorded my oven door and my cabinet doors and made it into a percussion section, and then recorded some other things I thought were beautiful and learned to use this program and wrote it for her. So that's it was a kind of a complicated inspiration for that piece, but it turned out okay.
That's great. Um, your music has been described as luminous, dreamlike, and hallucinatory in a way. And I was wondering if you intentionally strive for those qualities or if they naturally emerged from your creative processes.
It's just what I hear. Every new piece I start to write, I think I'm finally going to do something different. And I make all these plans, and it just doesn't satisfy me. And I work on it and work on it, and it just ends up sounding dreamy. It's a famous composer said that some composers are just moving the same furniture in the same room. That would be me. Whereas some composers, can create a whole new world with every piece. But from the beginning, my music kind of all sounded, at least harmonically and sonically, it all sounded like that. So I'm old enough now that I guess I'm not trying to escape it so much. I've accepted it. That's you do what you can. It's like as a flute player, if you know flute playing, you can recognize someone's flute playing if you know them well.
Mhm.
And so it's the same thing really. We all go for what we think is the right kind of sound, whether we're playing or composing or anything.
Wow, that's very interesting. Hmm. Um, how do you decide when a musical idea is complete, especially in works that kind of evoke an open or meditative space.
How do I, usually because I have to finish them? I don't know. I don't always write from beginning to end. So at the beginning, I'll just generate ideas. There's this nice stage at the beginning of writing something where anything is possible. And then over time, things sort of start to relate together. Um, I usually write the ending long before I'm done. And how do I know when it's done? I guess when it's been a while. This is unless I have a deadline. If you have a deadline, then you finish. Um, if I've worked on it a while and nothing's changed and I can't make it any better, but I think there's this ideal that I've never reached. So it would be like preparing for a piece for a recital, I think. How do you know when it's done?
Oh.
You know, for me, because I was a flute player long before I was a composer. I didn't start writing music until I was almost 30. Um, so I would say the process of writing a piece and a process of learning a piece is very much the same for me. You just keep working on it until, different things occur to you. If you keep practicing a piece, over the years, I've kept coming back to the Bach sonatas, like we all do. And every time I come back to one of them, I'll think, oh, wow, I finally understand this. I never got it before. And then a few years later, oh, now I finally, and it's unending. So I don't know if you're a real musician at heart, whether you're a player or a composer, I don't know that it's so different. If you've just really got music in your soul, you never really reach it. Would you want to reach it? you know, and not everybody will play my pieces exactly the same way. Young flute players are you're getting better and better all the time. Like your generation, actually 2 or 3 generations after me, they're just better, better than I ever was. So what's possible is, I think, kind of infinite.
Wow, that's such an interesting perspective. Wow. Um, I was also wondering what first drew you to combine birdsong and shakuhachi traditions, and how studying the shakuhachi changed your perspective on music.
Well, bird song, everything I hear is kind of in a stew, and the flute is high, and I don't know how you can not be influenced by birdsong.
Mm.
Um, in terms of the shakuhachi, that really changed my life. And if any of your listeners don't know what it is, it's a very simple traditional bamboo flute played vertically. And it took me about 6 months to get a sound. I mean, not a good sound, just a sound. I wanted to make that sound so much. The flute, you can bend a little bit, and certain notes on the flute will bend, like C is really flexible, but the shakuhachi, you can just bend all over the place, and it's really hard to play, but the things that are possible on it made me think of flute in a different way. So the the way the shakuhachi started was these monks were playing it in Japan a long time ago, and they weren't listening to any other music or any other sound. So they somehow had this instrument with 5 holes in it. And instead of trying to make notes even like we try to do so we can play in any key, they emphasized what that instrument did naturally. So there were some notes that were really strong. There's some notes that are hard to play and really quiet. And so they structured the music that way. So it just was a totally different way to think about it. And for some pitches, like B flat in the upper register, there's there's 2 ways, at least 2 ways, standard ways to get the pitch, and one is very quiet and one is very strong. And at first, I would just kind of playing by ear because the notation was hard to read, and I would sometimes play the wrong fingering. My teacher would be very upset. He'd say, it's not the same note. It doesn't have the same meaning. It's the same pitch, but not the same meaning. So that approach to timbre and form just gradually seeped in.
Wow. Um, how do you balance like honoring Japanese musical traditions while maintaining your own compositional voice?
With great difficulty. So I still play and teach the traditional music a lot. Um, and still, when I get a chance to study with some master from Japan, you don't ever stop studying shakuhachi. I mean, you're kind of a student forever. Another really interesting thing about it that I don't know if it has anything to do with our conversation or not, but in Japan, even the most famous teachers will all teach beginners because it's sort of the philosophy of the shakuhachi is bigger than training somebody to be a performer. It's just a beautiful thing like that. And now I'm trying to remember what your question was because I digressed. Could you repeat it?
Um,
Um,
how do you balance honoring Japanese musical traditions while maintaining your own compositional voice?
I would say with difficulty, and I'm American and I'm a woman, and both of those are, kind of outliers in the shakuhachi world, although there are more and more women in Japan now playing. Um, I just started doing it. And at first I was doing it, writing pieces here, and who was going to hear them in Japan? It didn't matter. And and then I started writing for other traditional Japanese instruments at a time when they were kind of hoping to get more people. I mean, a lot of the Japanese traditional music instrumentalists have grown up in a traditional family, and what they want to do is play Western music. Whereas here, we're drawn to this very um, kind of the mystique of the traditional shakuhachi. So there's an interesting thing that way. Um, how do I balance it? I don't know if I balance it. Um,
Mhm.
I guess the listeners would have to say, but a lot of Japanese players have played my music, so I guess it's balanced. I mean, as a composer, you have to get used to the fact that some people will like your music and a lot of people may not. I mean, you have just like being a performer, none of us can win every audition or, you know, my list of, I could have a whole resume of selected rejections, you know,
Mhm.
yet as the way I write my bio, it looks like I'm successful, but you just you just have to keep going. You have to keep your love of music going and just I think do your best. And that would be true for balancing respect for any tradition. I would say that I have a problem with people who just write something for shakuhachi without knowing anything about it. So maybe that makes me a snob, but I don't write for instruments unless I really know a lot about them. And I
Mhm.
write for a lot of unusual instruments, but boy, do I study. So hope that answers your question.
Yes, that very much did. Um, how do you hope performers approach the balance between technical precision and organic nature inspired expression in your pieces?
Well, what would I hope? Most either someone has commissioned a piece and they already like my music and let's not worry about them, but other pieces maybe they've heard a recording and they at least know there's something in there they want to try to play, or maybe their teachers made them play it. um, I would imagine, like me, you have to first learn some of the technical stuff before you can even get there. So if I'm learning a piece of contemporary music that I can't play technically, I at first just play through it every day slowly. Repeat the parts I can't do, and I just keep doing it every day. And then over time, um, something starts to happen. It's not linear. I'm sure you've experienced this in your practice. You work and work and work on something, and it's just you get nowhere. And then one day you can do it, and it's not like that previous day's practice made you do it. It's just not a linear process. So I love practicing. And I love the fact that our bodies can learn patterns like the things that we do normally, all our scales, they're just patterns. And if you think about what your fingers are doing, particularly in the upper register on the flute, that is not normal. The bottom register you can kind of figure out organically as you're making the flute shorter, but think of the patterns we've already learned. You can learn any pattern. All you have to do is allow it to sink into your hands. So um, I think I've digressed from your question again.
Um, well, my question was kind of just like how you hope performers approach the balance between the technical precision and the nature-inspired expression in your pieces.
I would say that some of my music, I've been told it can sound improvisatory, but I am really specific. So I do want people to play exactly what I wrote in terms of the fingerings and the rhythm, say. Um, but no matter how close you try to get to what's on the page, after you play it a while, once you can turn your metronome off, I think the best music, I would hope my music is this way. The elasticity in the rhythm and the shape of the phrases, it kind of falls into something natural.
Mm.
So I would just think that I would hope they would allot enough practice time to it that it felt natural to do what I wrote.
Mm.
And yeah.
Wow. Well, that's very interesting. Um, what do you hope young flutists take away from performing your music?
Oh, I would hope they would just love being a flutist.
Hmm.
I mean, it's the greatest instrument, isn't it? I mean, why are you playing it? Um, that they would realize they could play with their best sound, that whatever they could do on the flute, they could show in my pieces. I mean, maybe not really fast virtuosity, but there are plenty of pieces to do that. But that they would realize they could learn patterns and things that were idiomatic to the flute once they were learned, and they would just give them confidence to tackle other pieces, by that seemed maybe hard visually, by other composers, that you can really learn, especially when you're young, you can learn anything. You just have to be patient and enjoy the process of working on it. So I guess that's what I would hope, that they would enjoy working and learning the patterns, and just so that when they played, it was just pure music and not the things that we always worry about. Oh, in that spot, I keep forgetting this finger's a little slow. I would hope that they would enjoy playing my music enough that they would get beyond that. And when they perform, they could just be a pure music vessel.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Um, are there any new directions or unexplored areas within music composition that you are particularly excited to delve into in your future projects?
Um, well, I don't know. I don't know. Excited to delve into. I think I would say you never know what the next project is going to bring, and there's always a door open. And that I would hope I would always just go through the open door and not limit myself.
Wow.
I that I've explored. I basically would like to just I would like to keep writing. And, for any composer, what we all want and need is we need people to play our music and to ask us to write new pieces.
Mhm.
And very few composers can constantly say, oh, I've got a piece to write coming up.
Mm.
So I would just say is all you young players out there, of course, get to know your peers, the young composers, because they're the ones you're going to grow up with. But if you like somebody's music, try to get them to write something. Imagine what you would like to play, what combination, chamber music, and just reach out to composers. We're very easy to get in touch with. We're very open to new ideas.
Mm, that's nice to hear. I will very much think about that. Um, in your opinion, what are the biggest challenges faced by contemporary composers and performers within the classical music industry today?
Um, making a living. Um, when I was in most of my performing career, there was just a lot more money for the arts, particularly in New York City. And also, I think classical composers have always had a rough time unless you have a university job. And very few people make a living composing. Just like, you know, there are all these great flute players and there aren't enough flute jobs. So how do any of us manage? Boy, again, I've forgotten exactly what your question was.
Um, just like the challenges faced by contemporary composers
Yeah,
and
yeah, okay. Thank you. Yes, now, um, you want your music to get played and you want it to get heard, and there are ways to do that. If you can have your friends play it and you can put it online, and other people may steal it, nobody may listen to it. You can pay to have people listen to it, but it's really harder and harder to make any music at it, make any money at it. I think I would just advise people to always have a way to make a living in addition. I don't know, adopt rich parents. I wish I could have done that. They were farmers. So that you can write what you want. I mean, some people want to write movie music, some people want to write game music, but synthesized music it's gotten so good, and everybody's trying to save money. So, the opportunities for um, making money as a composer they're shrinking and changing. Um, and also young, one thing that's really great about younger performers is you're not just you don't have classical blinders on. Most of you you're aware of everything that's going on in popular culture. You're aware of jazz, you're aware of world music, you can all improvise. I mean, when I was coming through school, I basically went from the farm to the practice room, and I was not unusual in that that's kind of all I knew. Um, Boy, advice to young composers. The thing is, the only reason to do it for a living is because you just can't bear to not do it. So if you have that passion, you will find a way. I do think it's possible to live other places besides the big cultural centers now. Like you can live anywhere and be in touch with people all over the world. Uh,
Mhm.
Whereas when I was a young composer, living in New York really is a huge advantage because, and being a performer, because I had my colleagues to play stuff. And people are also playing music in all different kinds of venues now. And so the performing rights organizations, ASCAP and BMI, they only collect royalties for your performances if either the performing organization or the hall it's played in has a license. So you want your music to be played, but your friends playing it beautifully in someone's living room for a small audience, which frankly is just kind of ideal for chamber music. You want that. Um, you don't make music. You don't make any money for that. So I I wish I had better. I wish I had a good answer for that question. And I think there are a lot of things available that I just don't I'm not aware of because I'm so old. So you can edit out that whole question if you need to.
Okay, kind of like going into that question though, how can contemporary classical music be made more accessible to a wider audience? And are there specific strategies or initiatives you believe would be effective in generalizing its appeal?
Yeah, well, I think it does have a lot of appeal anyway. So if say there's a contemporary piece on a program with standard, like the uh, one contemporary piece, if the composer is there and talks to the audience, it's very difficult for an audience once they've seen the live person who has written it. It's very difficult for them to just reject it out of hand. So even though I'm talking very freely to you, it's always been very difficult for me to talk to audiences about my music. I usually, particularly if I have to play it afterwards, I usually memorize something, but it makes a huge difference. Um, and in terms of getting people to actually come to contemporary concerts, make your friends and family come, or take it to them and talk to them about it. Um, I don't know if you remember the Da Capo chamber players. They're still going, but they've been around a long time. And their strategy was Da Capo. They played every piece twice.
Mm.
And they were, usually premieres and, tried to get the audience to hear something different the second time.
Mm.
Um, a lot of technical information for a non-musician audience, I don't think helps much, but what your inspirations are and an anecdote from a rehearsal. I mean, anything like that. Open rehearsals are a good idea.
Mm.
Um, but for a lot of contemporary music is just as listenable as anything else. It's just less familiar.
Mm.
I have at times people have said, "Oh, I don't want to hear your music. I don't like contemporary music." And I said, "Well, you've never heard my music. You might like it. It's pretty easy to listen to." Um, and then I've been criticized because it's, kind of tonal and pretty. So I I think it's different for every situation. It's different for every composer, every audience. But everybody, you can find an audience somewhere. Make your friends play it in your aunt's living room. Oh, another strategy, offer refreshments.
Oh.
So offer it just that, it's going to be a short concert with refreshments where you can talk to the performers and just see. I mean, pretty, people don't want to be in a position where they feel like they don't know anything and don't understand it.
Mm.
So, uh, you know, offer refreshments, make it free or donation, and say, we want your questions about the music and what we can do better, just so that they really, because the performing is it's a two-way street. You know how when you perform and when you have a good audience, you can really feel it. They are literally part of what you're doing. You can feel the music go into them and you can feel their energy come back. So um, you can you can make that happen. But for composers, get to know your performers, serve them food. Say, if you will play my music, I'll make you a nice meal. I mean, um, and get to know young performers,
Mm,
who are plenty open-minded.
mm, yeah.
I, if I think of anything else, I'll email you, but it won't make it into this interview.
No. Um, a lot of music students don't really know how to start and how to understand modern classical music. So, do you have any tips for them?
Well, there's so many different types of modern classical music. I mean, it's when we look back at music history, or like if you're asked to audition, play a Baroque piece, play a classical piece, play a romantic piece, play a modern piece. The earlier music that's already been kind of sorted out and it's a style. But right now, anything is possible. So, boy, how would I would say for any instrument, if you have a teacher, and most classical people do say, I'm having trouble just getting into it. Could you give me an example of just a few pieces for my instrument in different contemporary styles that I might latch on to?
Mhm.
And you're a young performer, so if there are pieces that you have played, who is Bart your teacher now?
Yes.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, he'll know all these pieces. He'd be great for this. And you've probably played a good many pieces under him, so a good many new pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. So think of the ones that you heard and thought, oh, I want to do that one. Oh, that I really like that style. And talk to people about it. You know, put it on your recital. And as a performer, talk about it.
Mhm.
Even if it's was it is still hard for me if I have to play to talk right adjacent to playing, because I think my music mind is it's not verbal. So it's like I have to tear my head apart. I have to say something, and I have to, then go into the music part. But as a performer, I think you need to learn to do that.
Mhm.
If you're saying one or two things, like, I heard this piece and I really wanted to play it because something, it made me think of something, or it brought up some emotion, and I hope I can convey this to you.
Mhm.
So it's all of our responsibility.
Well, I think that concludes my interview for today. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to talk to you and learn about your perspectives in composing. Would you be comfortable with this interview being republished in a future book or podcast format?
Yeah, if you feel okay about it.
Yes, it was great.
It's wonderful to get to know you a little bit. And
Well, it was so much fun talking to you about um your pieces and your composer mindset and everything. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope we can contact each other again later.
okay, I look forward to hearing your flute playing.
Yay!
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you so much and have an amazing week.
you too. Bye bye.